Digitalna tehnologija obećava bliskost, zabavu, pa čak i produljenje životnog vijeka. Mogućnost vršenja milijardi proračuna na džepnim uređajima dala nam je utisak da smo otkrili novu dimenziju u kojoj je sve u našem životu moguće dokazati, pratiti i pretvoriti u novac. Ali jesu li praktičnost, profit i nadzor jedine primjene ove nove tehnološke moći? Buntovnici modernog doba koriste svoje vještine kako bi se suprotstavili tehnološkim gigantima i otvorili vrata drugačijoj budućnosti u kojoj ljudi neće biti proizvod.
I like the concept of the unwashed masses that no one respects or thinks they have good ideas coming from. But it's also the people who rise up and overthrow tyranny. I'm a hacker and a troublemaker and an activist. I politically identify as a non-ideological anarchist.
We need to look for cows.
Cows. Should we go out and find some cows? Should we go cow
And
hunting?
we need sugar canes too to make more books.
You need sugar to make books?
We turn the sugar into paper.
Whoa, there we go. I started programming when I was 5. I learned to read so that I could read programming manuals.
There, I got a lava bucket.
This is a house that I built with my family, and we built it out of papercrete, which is like this recycled paper. What we did was we just built the wall straight up, and then we chainsawed out the hole where the windows are going to be. It's completely off the grid, which means that both the communications up and down go straight to a satellite. I'm actually trying to figure out how to get microwave internet, which is going to involve putting antennas on all sorts of mountains to bounce signals back and forth to try and get online. So it'll be a bit faster. Living out here, you have to know much more about what's going on with your property. You have to know all the systems. There's no passing it off. In some ways, that's very aligned with hacker culture. You got to get in there and see how it works. Programmers are like digital superheroes. Everybody else gets to use the technology, the reality in which we play. But the programmers, we get to reshape the rules, the physics of our digital universe. Searching for cell phone signal. The values of hacker culture, the values of social movements exist more in startups than we ever think. Capitalism is an astounding belief that the most wickedest of men will do the most wickedest of things for the greatest good. John Maynard Keynes. Oh, this is great. This is one of my favorite shirts. And on the back, more world, less bank. And the dates, mobilized for global justice. The end of November 1999, the World Trade Organization was going to negotiate a new round where companies could go in and overturn a country's laws and fine countries if the countries passed laws that hurt their profits. And so there was a very large protest, maybe 50,000 people.
The WTO was supposed to be a shining moment for Seattle, but as we know, it didn't turn out that way.
As the world watches, demonstrators determined to disrupt the World Trade Organization smash windows.
Media was a centralized thing.
Crash downtown.
They created the narrative and the message. And so indie media had this radical concept that activists, that anyone concerned about the world and social change, should no longer focus on convincing journalists to cover their stories, but they should make the media themselves.
We have to find our own ways to get the message out. The revolution will not be televised by the corporate media.
The couple days before the protest, I walked in and joined as a volunteer. Spent the whole protest inside, just smelling the tear gas floating under the doors. Building software that let people go online and publish their own news.
We have decided to stop to cry to them and start mobilize grassroots. The power is in the people.
We came from Japan for protest to WTO.
A very exciting thing is emerging here in Seattle in people's opposition to the World Trade Organization.
We set it up so that people were doing live streaming video in the streets. We had laptops with all sorts of complicated network equipment, published photos, published video. In the late 90s, that was a very rare and innovative thing. That trade agreement ended up not being passed. That moment proved to be a shift where I said, okay, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to try and build software for social change full-time. And so I spent 4 years setting up computer labs and websites for anti-globalization groups. So you missed the raspberries, but there still are strawberries.
There still are raspberries.
There's still raspberries? My friend's Tad Hirsch, he'd been trying to figure out how to build technology for activism too. He had this text message alert system for protests. It was something called TextMob.
In the summer of 2004, IAA researchers produced TextMob, a cell phone text message broadcasting system. TextMob allows activists who are distributed throughout a city to remain organized during chaotic street protests.
The Republican convention in 2004 was in New York, and Bush was the president running for re-election on the campaign of continuing the occupation in Iraq. So by this time we had indie media sort of tweet-like messages, single sentence, 150, 140 character long messages that were breaking news updates, and we provide these every few minutes.
Protesters were able to bypass preemptive police tactics by sharing information on undercover officers and police movements.
TextMob was a bit of an improvised system, but the basic idea was that users would have their cell phones, and they would send messages to a server going online saying, I want to sign up for TextMob and these are the information I want to be a member of these groups. And we had this PHP web server, and the PHP web server would say, great, what's your phone number and what's your email provider? And then it would send emails to the companies, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile. And that would then send an email message that became an SMS. And those would go back and forth. The problem was AT&T very soon discovered this and said, you can't do that. Give us lots of money. Being a bunch of activists who didn't have a lot of money, we decided that we weren't going to do that. And instead what we built was a sneaky system around that. We built what is called a peer-to-peer network. And we built a little Java applet. And we put that applet in the Indie Media webpage. And whenever we wanted to send an SMS, we sent it out to all of these little applets running on many thousands of people's computers. That applet would then do the communication to the AT&Ts of the world from a new IP address, and it says, oh, you're a unique person, you've not done this anymore. And AT&T says, happily, I'll deliver a couple SMSs for you, but not a lot. And it started working, and so we built this system that let us send 40 to 50,000 SMSs an hour through TextMob without having to pay for any of it. TextMob, Indie Media, and the other activism work was a major precursor to what has become social media. I was a broke activist traveling around, living in a VW bus that I bought for $200. And I saw this contract on Craigslist listing a company trying to create a new media of communication. And I was like, I'm all for democratizing the media. I'll do this. This is the picture. It's not a very good picture, but that's the demo of the original Twitter. And we videoed it, and then the video got lost. So this is the original team that got split off to work on Twitter. So when we divided up the teams internally. So it's Florian, Jack, and Noah. And it looks like their picture's taken in a club or something. The whole team said, let's look at text messaging, let's look at social networks, let's look at building stuff. When we took TextMob and looked at it, we said, well, okay, this is interesting, but it doesn't have the social model that blogging has. And so the transition from Twitter to TextMob is that reading relationship and the API and the openness of the web. Over the summer that it went on, I actually, personally, after we launched Twitter, quit. I didn't realize what I myself was doing by partially the team that I helped create and hire, and partially the way the technology worked, and part of its roots in TextMob and other projects. I didn't realize the values that went into it. Because you don't have to be conscious of the values that you're putting in things when you do it. This is one of the biggest commercially focused open source conference in the United States. There's IBM and there's PayPal and Microsoft, and they don't necessarily agree exactly with my politics, but there's none of this like, you should be shunned because you want to overthrow capitalism. How are you?
Come here.
Yeah.
I want to show you something. Good.
The couple years I worked on Twitter and then seeing it grow totally changed my life. I've done a lot of interesting projects and I've traveled around the world and built lots of software. And that's a good one. It's a box? You built a box! Yeah. It's in the box, so exactly. It doesn't escape. And then one day I was talking to some people about how to build software for oil rigs. And I realized that as interesting as the problem was, I'd lost track of the desire and the need to focus more directly on changing the world. And so I wrapped up my projects and everything else. I said that I needed to refocus and apply the lean startup techniques, apply big data, apply startup technology, open source, all these other things, back to the activist world. And that's where I am now. We're heading up to Seattle. We're going to drop in on a new project called LEAP. And LEAP is an organization and software project that's been working for a number of years to create secure communication. There was a very big problem with the way our email and mailing lists, the way our communications work. People think that they're sending a private letter, and it turns out that what they're sending are postcards. The LEAP team reached out to me because I'm one of the people that has bridged the gap between the activist world and the startup world. There are not a lot of anarchist angel investors. And so they wanted to find someone who could advise them on raising money, on being a viable startup, while at the same time knowing that they don't want to abandon the larger political vision of why they're doing it.
I think it's really, really important to have the capacity to organize without all of your information being completely exposed. I think it's an existential question for social change in general. I don't think that it will be possible in the future without the capacity to communicate securely. Whether it's behavior tracking, whether it's business intelligence, or what other forms of analytics, it's the data that matters.
I'm not convinced you're right. Unlike most people in the the radical tech community, I've worked within that startup world. I have a pretty good idea how it works. The people who collect all that big data, they're going to stumble into more efficient solutions than the people who use intuition.
I guess taking a step back, I would say all aspects of governance are increasingly becoming systems of code and analysis and data. And certainly the lesson out of the dot bomb of 2000, when the NASDAQ internet stocks lost 80% of their value in a week, was that the companies left standing were the ones with the biggest databases. And so that lesson and that transformation has led to this current rise of surveillance as a business model. But surveillance is really a subset of this process of social control through data. And that to go and work for Silicon Valley is not selling out in the sense of like, oh, that band used to be cool and they sold out and made money. It's not like selling out, it's like switching sides. Using our labor, it's very important to be building something that is not potentially part of a dark dystopia. You go and work for Silicon Valley, the current game is building technology that could be used for totalitarian social control.
But if you don't collect data, if you don't run experiments and get the stats on it, then you're just going to be not as good. To achieve the larger political aims, it needs to be something that exists and can get widespread adoption. And that's a company in this world today. You know, I spent 5 years traveling around setting up protests and building community centers and technology for activist groups with the goal of changing the media. And the project which I told my friends I was selling out to work at the startup had a larger effect at transforming the media. Twitter.
Facebook or Twitter, it's a very good way for communication. It has no power of control from anyone. It's not like the media, like the TV, our Egyptian TV or whatever. They are controlling everything. Now there is no control. I just make a capture of any video or picture. I just upload it.
Very little actual protests are coordinated on Twitter. But the public sphere and the personal feeling about them is completely driven by it. It let people share ideas and memes, and share photos, and share video, and shape the media, and shape their own narratives. If only activists, only people who wanted to achieve social change use a technology, then it's very easy to get rid of. So in the case of TextMob, it was easy to eventually block and shut it down because people only used it at protests. But when people used Twitter at protests, Twitter got used for lots of other things. Justice! To transform the world and the way we make social change, we need the tools of social change be used in people's everyday lives for things that have nothing to do with social change. We're at the Chaos Computer Club camp. which happens every 4 years. It's where the European hacker community gets together and hangs out and plays and connects with each other in a face-to-face real world. This is the community that created WikiLeaks. This is a community that created Tor. This is the community that says that privacy is important. This is the communities that built the internet. It's camping with power cables and computers. As long as it doesn't rain, it's great, but when it rains, it's everybody rush to hit the circuit breakers and turn off the power to all the tents.
What I want to know is, what do you think we should do, like just be brutally honest, about how we should get the end-to-end encrypted email into the hands of, let's say 1 million, let's say 1 billion people, and like what should we do like next month, B, next year?
Leap needs to launch products under different names, with different designs, with different sales pitches and everything else, to see what people will sign up for.
So you would basically say, let's build 2 web pages. Let's build 2, or okay, let's just begin with 2, because I can't think of 20 things at once. And then one web page says, here's this VPN, it's great, and we see how many people sign up for that. And then another page that says, email, it's great, and we see how many people sign up for that.
Every single thing you think you can do on the Leap platform,
make it
you
different.
launch.
Okay.
Before you build it. The startup world has figured out how to do stuff and do things that make their software work better, and we think that's selling out. If you don't do the experiments at all, you'll never build something that gets used.
But I think like the problem is with the people here is because they know that if they kind of realize that the startup stuff might work, that there's some techniques there, but when they see startup people and they see that the people who work in startups are directed primarily by money or by fame. I mean, everyone here is camera shy. No one here wants to be famous. People want to be anonymous, and thus, like, I kind of think that that actually it's causing like this weird paradox where they're like, we know in order to be successful as revolutionaries, we need everyone to use this stuff. I think that's like the disconnect. It's almost an ethical disconnect, but it's not necessarily a disconnect of the techniques themselves.
I want to talk a little bit about why people are using startups or corporations' communication software and why they're not using our stuff. And in particular, I want to encourage us to steal ideas and techniques from the capitalists and the startup community. It's a race that we face. It's a race between different applications. To get secure communications, we need to win that race. And right now, we're not going to win that race. Right now, we have all these different projects very bravely and valiantly fighting out there, and we're not learning quickly. So we need to build things that people will use. We need to build things that people want to use, build things that people love. As software developers, as people who work in startups, as people who care about the future of the world, we have to look at where technology is being built, how it's being built, what values go into it, because those are the values that will then shape future society.